Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Turi. I hope we're live. I don't think we have too many people that will be joining us today. I hope there's a few people. I just want to first say hello to Clearwater Chad, my buddy, my friend. You probably, if you're watching this on replay, thank you so much for promoting this and for commenting. I also want to say hello, very much hello, to Jersey Jam 527. Thanks for commenting. And to One with Cats, Shell. Thank you so much, Shell, for being here. That really means a lot. I will be sending you more Star Trek memes shortly. This is a little bit impromptu um, in some regard. I was actually going to do this yesterday evening, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it on Fridays. But Saturdays are always good, especially Saturday evenings. And yeah, thank you so much, Shell. There, I can't wait. My Star Trek buddy, yes. May the force be with us. Wrong franchise, but you get what I mean. Live long and prosper as well. So thank you, Shell. Um, again, I appreciate everybody. I want to bring some stuff up here just so you guys know here. This is Chad. Chad gave me some nice comments earlier. Uh, again, hey Chad, I'm also just figuring stuff out right now, so I'm going to be going through some of the settings with you all like this. This is so cool. Hi everybody. And this is my favorite. This is Chad at his best when he's impersonating Mr. Ross Perot, the Reform Party third party candidate in the 90s. Yes, you can finish. Again, Jersey Jan, thank you so much. Clearwater Chad Pete again says, well, I'm not going to do my accent because that's reserved for another time, but you know what Pete has to say. And yeah, thank you guys. Two people watching, that's cool. You guys want to, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel at Mark Turi 123. Although I'm sure you're probably have subscribed by now because you got the notice, but please tell your friends and so on. Um, so, what am I doing today? As I said, it was a little bit impromptu. I decided somewhat last minute yesterday that I was going to do a live, but I changed it to this evening. And part of this is that I want to do a Q&A because there's so many questions that people have, not just about myself, which is only, part of what's going on here, but also I got a list of questions from my friend Joe Giuseppe, and there's a bunch of questions that she asked, and I will see if I can go through a lot of them or all of them in the time that we have. I'm also testing out my new mic, which is down here. I would love to get a better mic in the future. So hopefully, my goal is to get more subscribers and more watch hours, and then I can get better equipment. I've got these green earbuds in, to upgrade in the future. But for now, I got a $30 mic. These earbuds were like 70 bucks. I've had them for a little while. I don't have any lighting, of course. I'm just using my regular fluorescent lights. So it'd be nice to get like a ring light or something and do better things for you guys. Um, but yeah, really an impromptu Q&A. Before I do get into my Q&A, oh, thank you, Shell. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's nice. Yeah, it was just a $30 thing I got, at an electronics store. So hopefully this does well. And Joe, there you are, Joe. Hey, Joe. I will also, not only am I not going to do my Chicago accent tonight, I will also not do my horrible, horrible English accents tonight, unless it's by request. Yes, Joe. So Joe, of course, and Clearwater, Chad, and I sometimes do a lot of lives. We'd like to do more lives as well now that I have my channel back up. And I will tell you about that in a moment, where we play certain characters because it's just fun. and there's a lot of drama, of course, and hard stuff and emotional stuff that goes on with cult recovery and so on. And then there's all the drama and the SBTV community. So why not just take a break and watch, Clearwater Chad and myself, and I, of course, I play Pete Panzerotti, discuss things about lawsuits and fraud. And then, of course, when we have Joe involved, Joe is sort of the mother hen, so to speak, who calls us uncouth and makes sure that our etiquette is in. And it's a hoot. It's a fun time. I love doing it, but of course, I also am quite happy that I can do these Q and A's and lives now. So just very briefly, before I get into the Q and A, and again, thank you so much, Joe. And yes, Shell, Pete cracks me up. Well, I've been working on that accent for a very long time, and I could get into that, my inspirations for that accent in another time, of course. An actor as myself, I once took an acting class at Santa Monica City College or Santa Monica College. So, of course, I studied Stanislavski, but I don't mind, spilling the beans on my method if you would like. But we can talk about that afterwards. Um, how do I do that again? Acting classes. Please thank my acting teachers at Santa Monica College, which I attended from 2009 until 2011. But I also did improv when I was in college. Even before that, I did 2 college programs. And that goes all the way back to a couple workshops I did at the Second City in Toronto. And it was mostly improv. They, of course, they do sketch comedy as well, but I don't like to remember lines. So how do I come? It's just I don't know. I get into a certain character. Um, who knows how I get into it? It's really the accent, I have to say. The accent is the crux of the whole thing. However, about a year ago, I did make a channel about a year ago, roughly, and on YouTube, and it was only around, I think, until October or November of last year. And for some reason, it got stricken with some inappropriate commenting and spamming and all this kind of stuff, and I never really understood or got to know, what was actually going on. So I had to go through my semester at university, and it was quite a hard semester. I was trying to write a thesis, and it was it went how it went. And then certainly through the summer now, I'm like, should I go back on YouTube? Should I not go back on YouTube? I just hope that what I'm doing now doesn't get stricken again. If somehow it does, unfortunately, I can't make a third one. I wouldn't want to make a third channel, but I'm just hoping that with my more diligent postings and editing content and sort of archiving stuff that I've done over the past 15 years, to be honest, that I can either repost or put stuff in playlists. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to obviously talk a lot about Scientology on my channel, but it's not going to be the only thing. I really enjoy talking about languages, including the history and their evolution. I'm a historian and I'm studying history. I have a BA in history and an honors degree, and I'm working on a master's in history. So I would like to, talk a lot about that. And then religion is actually something I really like to talk about. And there's some questions that Joe had about that. And when I talk about religion, I'm not pushing it on anybody. It's more the academic study of religion. It's not like, oh, well, I have this, idea and you should all convert. That's not what I'm going to do. But just looking at religion from a sociocultural perspective. And I want to just say hello, Clearwater Chad. Good to see you. Good to see you. I hope that you're preparing for another Grip Pete showdown. Look at those trees, palm trees. I'm assuming, making me jealous. Thank you, Clearwater Chad. Although I know you live in Buffalo, where there are no Clearwaters, there are no palm trees. But that's besides the point. I'm going to pretend you live in Clearwater, Florida. Um, Good to see you for sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, man. That I really appreciate it, Chad. Uh, always appreciate your support. So thank you so much. And of course, those look like what are they? Lions? I don't know what they are. Tell me what those are, Chad. I'm confused. But we're going to start today again with just that background of like, yeah, my channel was taken down, unfortunately. Um, hopefully, this one will stay up. I'm going to be very diligent on copyright strikes. I've made playlists that you can go to. I have a history of religion and a language playlist, as well as an interviews playlist. So I've basically on my interview list, I've done lots of interviews over the years, over the past 15 years. My first one was with Mark Bunker, all the way back in early 2009 when I first moved to Los Angeles, and you can watch a 25, almost 26-year-old me talking about how I had just left Scientology not even a year before. And yes, they are buffaloes. Okay, I thought they were lions or camels. So I guess I need glasses, which I have, by the way. I just need to wear them. Um, you also remember what happened at Buffalo Wild Wings there, Griff? Bisons, yeah. Well, there's the Buffalo Bisons, which we will go and see a game with Chad one day. Chad or Chaz. We will see the game with Chaz, Chad. It's confusing, I know, but we'll go see one. Um, and yeah, anyway, this sort of complicated stuff that I like doing. So you can look at my interviews. I've done interviews with friends. I've done interviews, one-offs with people. And also, I will be archiving a lot of the Nerdy Bunch, which was how some of you guys know us. We had a podcast for a little while, live show with the Notorious Never Ends. Was really kind of frustrated because some of that drama tore up the Nerdy Bunch, and that was kind of something that I liked doing. But I have no ill will to anybody, for doing what they needed to do. And we're kind of continuing in that spirit. And I'm hoping maybe we can do something similar, at least with Chad and with Joe in the future when I do like PowerPoint presentations. And if you're a Star Trek fan, like I know Shell is a Star Trek fan, I did do and I posted my presentation on Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I promised in that, and that was about a year ago, that I would do a PowerPoint presentation on on the Dominion War and how that starts, and I will do that sometime in the future. I would like to do it before the year ends, so please look out for more sort of nerdy things. But there's also plenty of history stuff I want to get to, and other things, that I'll do PowerPoints and I'll present them here, hopefully within a reasonable amount of time, but they will be lectures that I enjoy doing. Let's see here. Yeah, Pete. Yeah, I know. Griff and Pete have been friends for 38 years. They met in 1986, but no one can remember where or when or how. So both Grip, as I say, Grip and Pete Penzarelli, somehow we either met in Detroit or Chicago or New York or Buffalo. We can't remember, but we definitely remember meeting in 1986. Just named two kittens, Dax. Oh, that's so cute from Disco. Not a big fan of Disco, but that's cool. I prefer to call it STD because I don't like the show, but I get it. I understand. Tilly, okay. Not my favorite, but I'm not going to judge. You can like what you like. I just love that you called it Dax. How about that? Um, Dax is great. And here we go, Pete. I don't know who you are, Pete, but thank you so much for coming. I hope you subscribed. I actually saw you that you subscribed just recently, and you're a loyal follower of Chad, which means that any friend of Chad is a frenemy of mine. Of course, frenemy. You understand what that means? Frenemy. Couple others here. Cultology Twins are hosting 6 p.m. Okay, cool. So again, everyone, there's a lot of SPTV creators out there, and yeah, enjoy. So yeah, please go to my channel. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and please look through those playlists to see if there's anything that interests you. I have a lot of different uh, uh, YouTube channels on there. I like Knowledgepedia. I like Kings and Generals for history. I like Lang Focus for languages. And then I like Religion for Breakfast for religious studies. And I'm just going to be adding them as I go as references as well. I'll be taking, if I'm doing a certain video on a certain subject, I might reference, this kind of stuff. So, anywho, and I like saying anywho because it's a Simpsons reference, and I am a big Simpsons fan. So, if you're also a Simpsons fan, please, if you want to tell me your favorite Simpsons line or quote, please tell me. Mine, of course, is when Sideshow Bob gets released from prison and he's going to kill Bart. And it's called Cape Fear, but the fear has the E at the end. And they're sitting in court. I love it. And the judges, he's on the parole board, I should say. So the parole board, they say, "Well, Bob, why do you have the words die, Bart, die tattooed to your chest?" And he says, "Oh no, that's German for wie Bart, wie." And of course, no one who speaks German could be an evil man, and they grant Bob parole. So that's my favorite quote. If you've got one, send one in. But let's start with the Q&A. Which again, I'm going to try to get through as much as possible. I don't want this to be too long, but I'm glad now we have 6 viewers. Thank you, everybody. Again, I appreciate it so much, and I'm hoping that this community will grow by going on more channels. I was on Joe's channel, I was on Chad's channel, and also on Marilyn's channel, Coffee Cults and Crafts, and I ended up getting more than 50 subscribers. I think I'm close to 70 now. So that's just incredible. And of course, I would love to do more and get better equipment in the future. But that's a story for the other day. So let's get cracking with the Q&A. I want to also say too, if you guys have any um, Q&As, any questions that I can answer, please type them into the chat. But I am going to go with the first of Joe Giuseppo's question, which is, what is the absolute craziest thing you came across in Scientology? And I love this question because there's a lot of crazy stuff that you find in Scientology. I also want to preface that by saying that it doesn't mean that Scientologists are crazy. It doesn't mean that we should belittle them or make them lesser than. But in the doctrine of Scientology, there is a lot of very far out stuff that Hubbard wrote. And I do think Hubbard had some untreated mental health issues and personality issues. For me, please understand that I did not get on to the auditing on the grades or the OT levels. I did do a lot of introductory services. In those introductory services, of course, it's probably the most pragmatic and the most sort of non-mystical and non-spiritual. So you don't deal with aliens, you don't deal with, 75 million years ago and Xenu and all that stuff. I was not even close. For me, at least, the craziest thing that I read, and I went over this with Marilyn, was a document or a policy, I should say, called Keeping Scientology Working Number One. Pardon me. So I get some water. And being Canadian, by the way, I will apologize and say excuse me for things that may seem strange to my American friends, but that's how I was raised. And so for me, that was crazy in that sense that I had been in Scientology for 2 years before I joined staff, and the first policy that I read on what's called Staff Status 1. And again, if you want a little bit more detail, please go to the recent stream that I did just last week with Marilyn Honig on her channel. Excuse me again. Pardon me. And basically, keeping Scientology working is Hubbard figuratively lighting a fire under the ass of a new Scientologist to try to get them motivated into, why they're there. And especially when you're on staff. But also, if you become an auditor, you go into the academy course room and you start your grades, or your levels. Pardon me, no, excuse me, it's your levels and or grades. It's been 20 years, guys. I can't remember. Processing is grades, I believe, right? Grade zero, grade one, grade zero is RSA straight wire. Anywho, you know what I mean. And you read this document. So essentially, the document says Scientology works 100% of the time if it's applied 100% correctly. When it is not applied 100% correctly, it means that there's something wrong. There's a PTS situation, or there's squirrel tech, and so forth. It also says that essentially the future of humanity, which of course L. Ron Hubbard called mankind, um, is in peril, and depends on what we do here and in with and in Scientology, here and now with and in Scientology. And it's like everyone's future and everyone's eternity is counting on you, and it's very egocentric, it's very fear-based, very fear-mongering, very alarmist, etc. And that was probably the quote unquote craziest thing. As far as, like, again, these out of body experiences or past lives or aliens and that kind of stuff, not really. I will say that when I did Dianetics auditing before I joined staff, I had a couple of past life episodes, incidents. One was that I was a young Marine who landed on the island of Guam, first wave, in 1944, and I was killed on the beach, killed in action. And then the second one, that I remember today, was that I think I was like a Spanish, um, like an artillery officer, and during the Spanish American War, and I was killed or something. And so, it's like I imagine those, and that's fine if you want to believe in past lives and reincarnation. It's totally cool. I'm not going to shame anybody. It's just, even if that does exist, I don't think Scientology auditing or Dianetics auditing actually uncovers it. If that's a thing that is true. Um, I think it's mostly a manipulation, at least Scientology processing, and Dianetics, it's hypnotism, false memory syndrome, etc. But I would say those weren't really crazy. So it's kind of hard to say. I do know that there are lectures where Hubbard does talk about, incidences of millions of years ago. The Free Being is a lecture that's somewhat publicly available. Some of his Ron's journals, he talks about, past lives. And then he definitely talks about it in Scientology, A History of Man, which I read once years ago when I left Scientology, and I don't really remember too much about it, other than it being kind of nuts. So, I remember reading about living past lives in walrus bodies, robot bodies, and so forth. This is pretty typical of the space opera that's in Scientology. So, yeah. So that I would say, just to sort of sum up, is it. Now let's go I'm going to go to the comments here. So Peter, so are you a computer geek? Not really. I don't know too much about computers, like hardware, software stuff. I know a lot of friends because I grew up in the 90s and 2000s who built their own computers, and were always had, like, the latest models and RAM and memory, and especially video graphics card, because they played tons and tons of games and stuff. But for me, I've got a nice little laptop here. I have Steam, so I like playing games, but I normally play them on, like, you know, um, low graphics and things like this. And some games just don't work for me, but that's all right. So here we go. I just want to get that here. Sorry, computer geek. Again, not really. I like computers, but I don't really know how they work or anything. What would King do? Yes, I remember seeing Ready to Rumble a long time ago. A long time ago, not anytime recently. Um, Lost that Big Blue. Mitch and Tony were talking about how many people have past life recalls. Yeah, of overlapping characters. Yes. Yeah, a lot of people were Jesus in a past life. A lot of people were Cleopatra, Marco Polo, Marcus Aurelius, Genghis Khan. That's actually one of the reasons why we can't talk about our case. So I'm not sure if you know this in Scientology, but every auditing action has a case, every auditing we do, so every pre-clear, and you're not supposed to share your past life experiences with others because they overlapped. However, back in the day, in like the 60s and 70s, people were allowed to do that. And Tori Christman has a lot of experience on that, where everyone was coming out of session and they were Jesus. What do I do for recreation? I love walking and biking. I love kayaking. I don't mind hiking, but low intensity hiking I enjoy. I also really like traveling, and I do so much reading and writing, and I love to study languages. So I don't know if that's what you mean by recreation, if you mean physical recreation, but that's kind of what I do. I'm not into sports, although I can play golf and tennis. As I'm getting older, my back is not really up to those sports anymore. But when I was younger, golf, tennis was a big one, and martial arts. I wish I could do martial arts. It's just unfortunate I can't. I would love to do like kung fu, judo. I like some of the different martial arts. I did karate when I was younger, but I would love to do kendo or aikido or judo or something, physical. But unfortunately, my back is just not the best as I get older. And basketball, I used to play a lot because I'm tall. So I would love to do those things. But I appreciate the question, Peter. So let's go on to the second one. So again, the craziest thing for me in Scientology, KSW1, and maybe we could say some of the things I learned afterwards, like the Xenu story and some of what they call space opera, Galactic Confederation, walrus bodies, robot bodies, and all that kind of stuff. This is a great question that Joe asked me. It says, how common is it that former Scientologists go back to their former religion, which I did in my case, or another belief? How does this differ from so-called cult hopping? Well, to give you guys a brief background, I didn't immediately go back to the religion that I grew up in because I didn't grow up with religion. I have family that are Jewish and Christian, but according to tradition, my family is Jewish because my mom's Jewish and my father's father was Jewish and my father's mother was Protestant. Also, on my mother's side, we had a lot of people who converted from Judaism to Christianity. So we're what you might call what they call crypto Jews, and crypto is, of course, a prefix that means hidden. So a lot of my family were Jewish, but on the outside, they like went to Christian churches and they took part in, they're from the Balkans originally. So they took part in those sort of cultural movements and centers, but inside they were always Jewish. But they just tried to ignore it or didn't practice or whatever. And that was kind of the same on my dad's side. My grandfather, my father's father, he grew up during the war, so he was very hidden about being Jewish. And if you asked him if he was Jewish, he would look around his shoulders and say, like, I hope no one's listening. And then he would whisper, yes. So, a lot of trauma in my family on both sides from the war and also from before the war, from World War One, especially the places where they lived. So I didn't directly go back. What I did was when I left Scientology, which was in May of 2008, I kind of swore off religion and got really angry. And then I moved to Los Angeles. And I knew because I had been to Los Angeles before. I also want to say my late great friend, and I miss him so much, Doug Scott Kramer, and I talked a lot about this before. So I'm going to post some of those videos in the next coming week, a couple weeks, about some of the groups that I discovered when before I moved to Los Angeles in 2005, and then once I was in Los Angeles from 2009 to 2011. And I did a whole thing. I went to Unitarian churches, I went to Quaker churches, I went to Buddhist, Soka Gakkai, Tibetan Buddhist. Um, I went to the Baha'i faith. I went to a place called the Agape Spiritual Center, the Eckankar, the Self Realization Fellowship. And I had done that previously. Like I had even done that when I was 18. So I've had a lot of experiences, one-offs experiences, or very brief 1, 2, 3, 4 month, type of small investigations into different religions. But I will say that in 2010, I actually did join a religious organization. I'm really not comfortable saying which organization this was because I still have friends to this day who are dear friends of mine who are part of this organization, whom I don't want to risk losing their friendship. They've never told me that I would lose their friendship if I criticized their organization, but I just don't want to. So from 2010 to 2011, I was for a year a part of this organization, and I actually participated in some rituals that you have to be involved, heavily involved, in order to get through. And some of these rituals were kind of not for the public. Now, if anybody wants to know what those are, message me privately and I'll tell you. But I got involved in that group. When I left, I got angry again. And from around 2011, probably just until somewhat recently, probably till 2020, 21, I joined secular groups because some of these humanist and atheist groups were very helpful to me, where I did a lot of presentations almost like this and Q&As like this to certain humanist and atheist groups. But I never considered myself a humanist or an atheist. And I got really close to the organizations, and then I got really turned off by those organizations. And so the last affiliation that I had was before I came here to Hungary. And I was very disillusioned from those experiences because I did, in my personal subjective experience, find a lot of closed-mindedness and a lot of what I call anti-religious fundamentalism, which I do believe is just as damaging to people than religious fundamentalism. And I had a really bad experience when I joined the steering committee for a humanist group in the city where I'm from, in Toronto, and I was bullied and gaslit and heckled, at a meeting. And it was just awful, and I didn't get along with the people, and so I quit. And so it is. They're still doing fine. Again, every once in a while, someone will message me to say, "How are you? I hope you're good." But basically, they've disconnected from me. I've disconnected from them simply because I just wasn't. No matter how much I thought I wanted to be accepted, I wasn't. And so really, I started becoming more quote unquote religious, which is always a weird word to say, maybe within the past couple of years, especially where I'm living now, because I'm very close to my own community and my own, like where I live, we have a fairly large Jewish community. And I've been taking like educational classes. I do want to mention, I never really had a religious education. And I kind of thank my parents for that, because I know some people who go to Sunday school and they're forced to go to church and they hate it, and then they become very anti-religious as adults. My parents, we never went to church, we never went to synagogue. I never went to Sunday school or Hebrew school. Like, it was just, when I turned 18, it was my choice. And actually, some of my friends, some of my family would go to synagogue, and some of my friends would go, or some of my family would go to church. and I was never forced to. So I don't know. Again, I completely understand for people whose religious upbringing is forced on them or more strict. But I'm really glad that even though the trade-off is when I was wanting to become more religious and trying to find where I fit in, it took over 10 years of self-discovery and not having a solid foundation where I could say, okay, I am this thing, I am part of this community. As I get older, I'm actually very happy about that. So even though I had a decade or more of not trying to figure out where I was in the world and not being able to, I am very thankful for my parents for again not forcing me. And I sympathize with people that have to be forced because I've had a lot of friends over the years who were forced to go to Catholic church, forced to go to Sunday school or Protestant church or Muslims or Jewish. They were in Hebrew school when they were 12 and 11, 12 years old, learning how to read Hebrew for their bar mitzvah. And then it was over. And it can be very disillusioning growing up in a very strict, dedicated religious family. I did not. Um, However, I would say that I'm an off and on type person when I was younger. So I did start, learning more about my Judaism when I was like 18, 19, and then I went on to do something else. And then when I was 25, 26, and then I went on to do something else. But as I've gotten older, older and older and older, and even within the past 10 years, I've just been being able to be more comfortable. And I think that's probably just with aging, right? When you're younger, it's hard. You don't know exactly who you are. You start to know a little bit more about yourself as you get older. So that is a really good question. Let me just go back just to make sure I answered it. So cult hopping. So I guess you could say yes. I mean, for me, I just want to say about former Scientologists now. Um, there's three different avenues for ex-Scientologists. And before I say that, I just want to go back to the chat. Yeah, Tai Chi is a form of exercise. I've not done that before, but I would like to. SGI, EEK, yes, they chant very fast, and it's very hypnotic, and they are so very, very strict and fundamentalist about the Lotus Sutra, which I've read, I enjoy, but their chanting and stuff, when I was in Los Angeles, it became very hypnotic, and I got a couple of red flags because I had just left Scientology and I had my distance. And then yes, I know that Chad is getting his master's degree, and I'm very happy about that. I hope you do well, and we will do study sessions together because I still have a year to redo my thesis, and we can do some joint sessions, Chad. But I'm very, very happy that you are doing that. So to get back to the question, I'm sorry, Joe, it took 20 minutes to get here, but the three different types. First is, I think the overwhelming majority of people who are ex-Scientologists probably came to Scientology because they were more of a spiritual type person. Maybe they were into Eastern religion or New Age or something like this. Please note that before I became a Scientologist, I was actually practicing Buddhism for about a year and a half, or 2 years actually, maybe a year and a half, 2 years at a Tibetan Buddhist temple. And for me, it was like, okay, I'm sitting, I'm meditating, I'm doing these prostrations. The culture of everyone, like I was the only Western person in my community, and everyone spoke Mandarin or Tibetan or whatever, and I didn't fit in. And of course, I'm kind of an a-hole, so I I asked some questions, and of course, whatever. And so Scientology promises that your problems with Buddhism will be fixed in Scientology, and I can get into that in other, ways, Scientology Buddhism connection. But I think what happens is the majority of people, like let's say they're into some new age thing, or they're reading Krishnamurti, or they're doing Buddhism, or they're whatever. Most ex-Scientologists will go back to that thing. So whatever avenue they took, to be spiritual without religion, they will go back to that. The second group of people would be, I guess, like me. I mean, eventually I got back to the religion of my family, the religion of my roots, although it took a little while. But yes, a lot of people, if they were Christians before, again, even if they were Buddhists before, if they were Protestant, if they were whatever, they will go back to their family religion or whatever religion they grew up in. We saw that with Leah Remini, although I don't know anymore. But her mother's Jewish, but her mother converted to Catholicism, and Leah Remini went back to Catholicism. Katie Holmes was raised a Catholic. She went to Scientology. She went back to Catholicism. So did Nicole Kidman. So that's another thing. People go, they're told, well, you can be Scientologist and a Christian and a Buddhist, and then they figure you can't be that, and then they go back to their formal religion. And the third group is people who just become whatever you want, whatever term you want, atheist, agnostic, secular humanist. And that's pretty rare. I know that there are some big names in our community that might be those things, but I don't know. I can't give percentages because there's never been like a survey about this. I think that'd be an interesting thing. But for the most part, I think people go back to whatever avenue they took. So that means they grew up in probably a Western religion or a Christian religion or whatever. They got into something New Agey or Eastern mix, esoteric thing. Then they went to Scientology. Then they go back to that New Age thing or whatever it is. Or they go directly from a world religion to Scientology and they go back to that world religion. And then I think, my opinion, then someone either born and raised in Scientology or joins Scientology then becomes secular. Let's just say secular for all intents and purposes. And that to me is smaller, but again, I don't have any evidence of that. I don't know. I do know, however, that certain groups like skeptics groups, humanist groups, at least they'll give us some opportunities to talk and so forth. So it can be helpful. So that's why I think some people join those things. But again, if you have some quarrels with them, you find out dogma is dogma and people are people. And, those who think they know don't, and those who think they know So I think that's how it goes, something like that, or those who think they know don't. Anyway, I can't remember what that proverb is, but put it this way: if somebody thinks they know everything, they've convinced themselves. If it's religious or secular, you can't talk them out of it. So that's that. Joe, I want to say the next one was, what did you think of the Tom Cruise stunt at the Olympics closing ceremony? I watched the Olympics. I didn't watch the closing ceremony, so I can't comment on that. I will do it, and I will come back to that at a later time. But I did not see that. However, again, I did watch the Olympics where I live. We got a lot of medals this time around, and I was very happy about that. Especially, I do love kayaking, rowing, canoeing, anything with the water. I love. The next one that Joe asked is, how did you make enough money to eat and survive on a staff salary in Scientology? The basic question is, I didn't. I didn't eat a lot. I tried to survive on a couple euros a day and just buy whatever I could. The org and the Berlin org, excuse me, at the time was there was next to an Aldi, which is no longer there. And it was like a small Aldi market. And so I would go in if I had 2 euros or 3 euros or 5 euros, and I would just get what I could. And it might just be, some vegetables or, whatever, and just ate what I could. What also started happening was the Sea Org members, most of which were Hungarian, would buy cheap food and cheap meat, cheap pasta, and they would make stuff for us. But it was always pretty disgusting. And if you want to know more, I do tell Aaron about that, about a time how the Sea Org members had made like fried breaded liver, like beef liver, and I don't like liver, and I ate a bunch of portions and threw up and then ate more. And so it was always really bad. I lost 70 pounds, 75 pounds in 9 months. How many kilos is that? It's well over 100 kilos in a 9 month period. And I was just starved and had a lot of problems because of that. So, how do staff members do it? Well, if they're like me, you don't eat, you just, or you eat what you can, eat once a day, you eat small meals, and you just, get very sick and thin and gaunt. And if you look at most Sea Org members and staff members, you know, they're probably pretty thin because of the, you know, lack of food and nutrients and whatnot. Um, Next one is what did you have to eat on a staff salary? Did I just say that one? Yeah, what did I have to eat? Whatever I could scrounge. Sometimes I would buy, honestly, like raw vegetables and put them in a bowl and put them in the microwave, and that's all I ate that day. So like raw potatoes, and I would eat, I put them in the microwave to make like a baked potato, and maybe there'd be some butter somewhere, and that's what I ate in a day, or whatever the Sea Org made or whatever, but not a lot. So yeah, and look to Aaron's video if you want to learn more about that, because I go more in detail. However, if you want more details, just let me know. But I do go quite a bit more to that. The next one is another great question again, Joe. So, how has religious studies helped in your recovery, and have your beliefs evolved since leaving? Well, yeah, religious studies. So, when I left Scientology, I told you guys I went to college, community college at Santa Monica College, and I studied film, I studied theater, I studied journalism, and I studied philosophy. Those were my most of my courses that I took. And the reason why I took film was because when I went to college in Canada when I was 18, I had taken a film studies course, so I continued that. I got interested in theater, so I took some theater courses. And then, I did journalism, a couple news writing and media criticism courses. And then I did some philosophy courses. And these are all mixed between, none of these were really, I mean, my major was film studies, but a lot of my electives, humanities and social science electives and so forth, were specifically geared to those subjects. Of course, I took other subjects. I took a science course, whatever. But I took quite a bit of those courses. So I took like 3 philosophy courses, 3 or 4 media journalism, critical studies courses, and then I think like again 4 or 5 film courses and however many other courses I took. But one of the things that I loved about religious studies is um, knowing that like how we're raised has such a massive impact on how we see religion, and how, if you are raised in a religion to fear God, and if God is defined as a being, a giant man or something who's in the sky, who's watching you all the time, and if you do something wrong, God's going to punish you and send you to hell and all this kind of stuff, it really, really warps people. And a lot of the people that I met in the atheist community and the humanist community had been raised that way. And they were the anti religious fundamentalists. And what religious studies taught me, and again, no judgment there because I wasn't raised that way, so I don't have those personal experiences. But how I was raised, as I mentioned before, very liberal, very open. Maybe I'm lucky, maybe I'm privileged in that way. And again, I think my parents was that religion was always just more of a choice that people had. And I never had any anger. Uh, One thing that I don't like is when parents make God a third parent. And I don't think I'm ever going to have kids, but let's just say by some miracle I do. I don't want God to be the third parent because that's just kind of bad parenting. And I understand because I'm a single person with no kids. I'm not going to tell other parents how to parent. But I've had this conversation with a lot of parents, including my mom and my sister and other people that I've known. And it's like God becoming the third parent it really can do a lot of damage. So Um, Religious studies has helped me understand that there are 10,000 religions in our world today, that when someone says they're anti-religion, it means they're against all 10,000. They want all 10,000 to be removed from the earth, except they don't actually mean that because they probably don't know all 10,000. And in fact, human beings don't even know. There's not even one scholar right now who knows all 10,000. And so those people are taking from what they know and what they were raised. And religious studies help me understand that not everyone is raised the way I was raised, that people were raised in more of an abusive, fundamentalist, type of structure, and that I should be compassionate to those people. In addition, I also have Scientology on my resume, so to speak. And even though I'm critical in some ways of religious scholars calling destructive religious groups new religions, because there are new religions, and they kind of dismiss sometimes, and some scholars can be a little bit more liberal, on Scientology and things like this. What I learned was that's also things that are part of our experience. And our experience matters. So I don't like to judge people, even though I have a lot of difficulty and a lot of problems with the humanist and the atheist groups that I was affiliated with from like 2016, 17, maybe, or 2011, even until maybe 2020, 21. I can't judge those people because I haven't walked in their shoes, but they haven't walked in mine either. So if someone has a very visceral, triggering response to religion, you know, religious studies help me to understand that it's not all positive. It's not all negative, but it's certainly not all positive. And that's okay too. So, what I took from religious studies are another couple things, which is that not only are there 10,000 different religions in the world, but there is no scholars in general cannot even put together a coherent, all encompassing definition of a religion. So, some people who are critics of religion will say that religion is just worship of a supernatural being. That's true, except for all the religions that don't have that. And there are some religions that have an espoused belief in God. They're so called theistic or theocentric religions. And then there are some that don't. And those so-called non-theocentric or non-theistic religions, which do exist. So religion is a word that goes back around 150 years. There's 10,000 of them in our world, and no one really knows exactly what is and isn't one. And to me, that kind of blew my mind because it really goes back to how you were raised. And if people are raised to believe that religion is faith in a supernatural being, there's almost nothing that I can say to that person that's going to dissuade them because they have a deep rooted personal experience. And the only thing is, um, when people have a lot of hate and anger in their heart, whether it's hate and anger towards all religions or all religions that they know of, or hate and anger to all religions that they're not a part of, or churches that they're not a part of, because believe me, I know that there are a lot of people, a lot of religious fundamentalists out there who will say that only one type of Christianity is Christianity, only one type of Judaism is Judaism, Islam is Islam. That's just hate. It's anger. And that's the type of stuff that I was able to be like, you know what? Religion's here. I hope in the future that in places like America, there will be a more secular state, that the religious right will not have as much impact on public policy. Um, but I'm one person. What can I do? So I know what I know. Other people know what they know, and all I try to do is to share. And so again, if you are interested in that kind of stuff, my religion, what's it called, playlist has videos on that. So have your beliefs evolved since then? Yes and no. Yes and no. I don't really like to exactly go into my own theological stance. I don't think it's relevant. Again, Joe, if you want to know, I'll PM me. But I would just say that um, I wouldn't call myself an atheist, and I wouldn't call myself a theist in a traditional sense. So I don't believe in a personal God, but I do not believe that there are no God or gods. I sort of am agnostic, as I think everyone is, but my theological stance would be in that category of non-theistic views of God, which again, and I will plug these two. I did a stream with Doug, which I'm going to upload later, and I also and that was last year with our friend Doug Scott Kramer, rest in peace. And then I did upload um, theological stances and non-theism and secular philosophies to my channel. So if you're interested in those varieties, when you get to the non-theistic views of God, I'm in there somewhere. Again, you want to know specifically, PM me. Another one here, and I'll just go through a couple others because we're getting to an hour and I don't want to keep anyone. Thank you. There's 6 people watching. I appreciate you guys so much. Um, so, what would I say to my younger self? Thank you, Joe, for saying this. Uh, Quit, your first college program. Get out of it. When I was 18, I joined a college program. I failed the first year. I had to come back, and then a lot of things happened during that college program and during the end of that college program that put me in the headspace to be recruited for Scientology. So I would say, when you wanted to drop out, drop out. And that's it. That's the only regret that I have right now. I don't regret joining Scientology. I don't regret, making mistakes. I don't regret falling on my butt. I don't regret having to start my life over numerous amounts of times. I don't regret it because I wouldn't have the friends that I have. My friends in Los Angeles, my friends, on the internet and here where I live right now, all over the world, I have friends. Had I not been in Scientology, there'd be a lot of people like Doug, like Joe, like Chad, some of my other late friends like Gary Scarf and Rob Robertson and Michael Pattinson, like just people that I know and knew who are no longer with us. Um, I wouldn't know who they are. They wouldn't know who I was. So I don't regret it. Um, and there's 2 more, Joe. So I'll just go through the one of them, and then we'll save another one. We'll save another one for another time. Maybe I'll do this next week or something. But have you had any harassment from OSA since leaving and or since speaking out online? I have no idea why my channel was taken down. I hope it wasn't OSA. I hope maybe I did something kind of dumb. I didn't know. I just didn't know what I was doing. I hope it wasn't them. You know, I've been out publicly for less time than I was out. And I do know of a friend. Her name is Sabrina, and she lives in Switzerland. We were on staff together in Berlin. According to her, what she knew, I don't have an SP declared. So I don't know if I've ever been declared. That's never been clear to me. It was clear to me probably that I was PTS or something like this. And again, I talked to Aaron about this, how I got dismissed from staff, but I don't know if I'm an SP. So I don't know. I will say that I have thought more about this question when I first left and when I lived in Los Angeles. And paranoia is something that really crept into me, especially when I lived in the US, thinking I was getting followed. People were telling me things, oh yeah, you've left, so you're gonna be the victim of an OSA op. Maybe I'm so oblivious that I can't see it, but I can't see it. Um, so I don't know. That's the question. I know that's not a good question or answer, but I have no idea. I do know that a number of years ago, when I was in Los Angeles, and again, you can see this on my interviews channel, there was a special called the Scientology Plan on German public television. This was back in like 2009. When I was living in Los Angeles, I did an interview, but I was anonymous. I was interviewed, but they put a shade, like my face was black, although you could tell it was my voice. And I know that the interviewer from ZDF talked to a woman named Sabrina Weber, who was the director of special affairs, and mentioned me in my name because I had some visa issues and so forth. And she acknowledged me, and that special, they didn't distort my voice. So again, I don't know. I really don't know. But I don't really, I don't know what to say because I don't have anything terribly earth-shaking as far as David Miscavige or the Sea Org or stuff like this. Me to Mike Rinder, there's a huge gap. Put it that way, or me to Marty Rathbun. So I would like to think that they haven't done anything, but I also know that I could be completely oblivious on that. So I just want to end because it's been an hour. I want to thank every single person who's watched this. I'm really, really happy that I get to do this. Thank you, everyone who's encouraged me to, come back on YouTube, Chad, Joe, everyone else. Please message me, PM me if you want any further questions. And I don't know if this will be a regular thing or not. It'll just depend. But I'm thinking I'd like to do something regularly, in some case regularly, because at least I can talk and fill in some gaps. And again, please let me know if you have any questions that I can answer for you on my personal experience on Scientology, my experience in Scientology and Scientology itself, or of course in any of the things that I'm interested in, because I want this to be, Scientology and my experience, but also telling people that are ex-Scientologists that there's a whole world out there and it's okay to be interested not just in the tech. You can be interested in history, languages, politics, religion. You can be interested in science and engineering and crocheting and dancing and playing the bongo drums. You can do what you want, right? When you're out. You can't really do those things when you're in. So, yep, thank you again. I appreciate everyone's time. I very much appreciate everyone listening to this. And thank you. And please have a good night, good evening, wherever you are.